Evelyn Cross owned a trillion-dollar empire, private equity, logistics, hospitals, and the very corporation her husband bragged about at every cocktail party as if he had built it himself. But at the Apex Meridian Charity Gala, none of that power mattered for one brutal, unforgettable moment. In front of investors, cameras, and Chicago's elite, Nathan Cole laughed while his mistress, Sabrina Vale, slapped his pregnant wife across the face, and his mother, Diane, poured red wine down Evelyn's dress like humiliation was entertainment. They thought she was weak. They thought she was trapped. They thought they could disgrace a pregnant woman and walk away untouched. What they didn't know was this: the woman they assaulted was the hidden majority owner, acting chairwoman, and final signature behind every promotion, contract, and career in that room. And before the night ended, one boardroom command would flip their luxury world upside down: public scandal, executive collapse, corporate ethics investigation, and a revenge they would never see coming. Scene 1, 800 words. The night they mistook silence for weakness. By 7:10 p.m., the Halston Grand Ballroom was already glowing like a jewel box, crystal chandeliers scattering white light over black-tie guests, camera flashes bouncing off polished marble, a string quartet near the stage pretending elegance could keep ambition civilized. The annual Apex Meridian Foundation Gala had always been less about charity and more about proximity. Proximity to capital, proximity to power, proximity to the people who decided whose names rose and whose disappeared. Evelyn Cross stood alone near a column wrapped in white orchids, one hand resting lightly against her 6-month pregnant belly. Her emerald gown was conservative by design, high-necked and tailored to avoid attention, but she drew eyes anyway. Not because anyone in that room recognized her authority, they didn't, but because she carried herself with a steadiness that felt expensive in a room full of performance. She had arrived without an entourage, without bodyguards at her shoulder, without the invisible architecture of status most billionaires used as armor. She had done that deliberately. Tonight she was not here as chairwoman. She was here as Nathan Cole's wife, hoping, against her better judgment, that public support might remind him of who he used to be before his hunger for image became a second religion. At 7:23 p.m., Nathan entered. The shift in energy was immediate. He moved through the room with the choreography of a man who had rehearsed importance in mirrors. Navy tuxedo, curated smile, hand placed at the lower back of the woman beside him, as if introducing a trophy he had earned. Sabrina Vale shimmered in a silver gown cut for impact, each step calculated, each glance designed to be witnessed. 3 vice presidents broke off from their conversation to greet him. 2 investors turned fully. A lifestyle editor lifted her phone. Nathan saw Evelyn, paused, and then smiled with a thinness that didn't reach his eyes. "Evelyn," he said when he reached her, voice warm enough for nearby ears. "I didn't expect you this early." His phrasing landed exactly as intended. Not welcome, but tolerated. Sabrina tilted her head and gave Evelyn a once-over that began at the shoes and ended at the belly. "You're his wife," she said, as if clarifying staff hierarchy. "I've heard so much." Not a lie, Evelyn thought. People like Sabrina always heard what they wanted. Before Evelyn could respond, Nathan placed a guiding hand on Sabrina's arm and steered her forward. "Come meet the Mercer Group," he said. To Evelyn, without turning back, "Try to stay comfortable. It's a long night." The dismissal was subtle. The room understood it anyway. At 7:40, Diane Cole arrived in black velvet and diamonds, heavy enough to announce themselves before she spoke. Nathan's mother kissed his cheek, embraced Sabrina, and gave Evelyn a glance sharpened by years of controlled contempt. "Still here," Diane said lightly, accepting champagne from a passing server. "I assumed crowds would be difficult for you in your condition." Evelyn met her gaze. "I'm fine, Diane." Diane smiled. "You always say that right before you create a scene." Across the ballroom, Nathan laughed at something Sabrina whispered and leaned closer to hear more. For a moment, Evelyn watched him the way one watches a house after noticing hairline cracks in the foundation, with a grief too practical for drama. By 8:05, the speeches began. Corporate responsibility, community expansion, ethical leadership, every sentence polished, every claim applause ready. Evelyn stayed near the back as planned, listening while executives praised Apex Meridian's values. She wondered briefly whether hypocrisy felt heavier when spoken under chandeliers. When the program broke for networking, Sabrina crossed the floor with the confidence of someone who believed cruelty was a form of social proof. She stopped directly in front of Evelyn, close enough that perfume erased oxygen. "I should thank you," Sabrina said, smiling for nearby observers. "You made this easy. Men like Nathan don't want limitations." Her eyes dropped to Evelyn's belly. There were witnesses now, orbiting under the pretense of conversation. Evelyn kept her voice even. "Step back, Sabrina." Sabrina laughed softly. "Or what?" Nathan approached just in time to hear the last word and chose his side with the reflex of a coward. "What's going on?" he asked, though his tone suggested Evelyn was the source. "Your wife is being territorial," Sabrina said, "in public." Nathan exhaled through his nose, amused. "Evelyn, please, not tonight." Not tonight. Or as if betrayal had office hours. Diane appeared at Nathan's shoulder, took in the triangle, and decided escalation was entertainment. "This is exactly what I warned you about," she said to her son, loud enough for 3 tables to hear. "A man trying to rise cannot carry dead weight forever." A couple nearby fell silent. A junior analyst stared at his glass. Evelyn felt her pulse throb once behind her eyes. "You should stop talking," she said quietly. Diane lifted her wine, expression brightening with malice. "Or what?" Then she moved. It happened in one clean arc, wrist turning, crimson liquid flying, red wine striking Evelyn from shoulder to waist, blooming across emerald silk like an injury. Gas cracked through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Oh my God!" Phones lifted instinctively. For half a second, no one moved. Then Sabrina stepped forward and slapped Evelyn across the face. The sound was sharp, undeniable. Not dramatic. Worse. Real. Evelyn's head turned with the impact. Her hand flew to her cheek, the other locking protectively over her belly. The quartet stopped mid-phrase. Nathan stared, then laughed once. Short, disbelieving, performative, like the room had delivered a joke tailored for him. That laugh was the point of no return. Security appeared at the edge of the ballroom. 3 men, 1 woman, earpieces visible, posture alert. Nathan, mistaking authority for ownership, lifted his chin toward Evelyn. "Remove her," he said. The lead officer didn't move. Nathan frowned. "Did you hear me? Remove her. She's causing a disruption." The officer touched his earpiece, eyes fixed not on Nathan, but on Evelyn. "Copy," he murmured. Then, he to Evelyn, respectful, controlled. "Ma'am, are you ready?" The room shifted, subtle first, then unmistakable. Evelyn lowered her hand from her cheek. A faint red mark had formed along her skin. She straightened, wine-stained gown and all, and looked directly at the man who had laughed while she was assaulted. "Yes," she said. The officer nodded once. "Initiating transition." Across the ballroom, the LED backdrop flickered. The charity logo vanished. A black screen replaced it, then a silver corporate seal. Apex Meridian, Group Office of the Chairwoman. No one breathed. Nathan's expression faltered, confusion edging into fear. Sabrina stepped back. Diane's glass slipped in her fingers and shattered at her feet. At the far end of the room, the 2 board directors who had ignored Evelyn all evening rose from their seats at exactly the same moment. Evelyn took 1 step forward, then another, and the entire room began to understand they had just witnessed an assault, not on a helpless wife, but on the most powerful person in the building. The silence after the screen change felt mechanical, like the ballroom itself had lost power and was running on backup. At center stage, the silver Apex Meridian seal held steady, cold and unmistakable. A second line faded in beneath it. Emergency Governance Protocol. Executive Authority Transfer in progress. No one clapped. No one whispered. The only sound was the soft crackle of a fallen spotlight warming above the stage. Nathan blinked rapidly, as if vision itself were malfunctioning. He turned from the screen to Evelyn, then back again, searching for the angle where this became a misunderstanding. "What is this?" he said, voice too loud in the hush. "Who did this?" The answer arrived before anyone spoke. From the left wing of the ballroom, Leonard Shaw, Apex Meridian's long-serving general counsel, was stepped into view with 2 compliance officers and a digital records manager carrying a sealed tablet case. Leonard was famous inside the company for one thing. He never appeared unless consequences were already signed. He stopped 3 feet from Evelyn and inclined his head. "Chairwoman Cross," he said clearly, "your directive has been queued, awaiting final confirmation." A visible tremor moved through the guests. Some leaned forward. Others leaned back as though distance might erase what they had already witnessed. Nathan let out a strained laugh. "Chairwoman?" He looked around, trying to recruit disbelief from the room. "Okay, enough. This stunt." Leonard did not look at him. "Security protocol confirms identity. Biometric and legal authorization matched. All board proxies are active." Evelyn spoke without raising her voice. "Display ownership structure." On the main screen, a clean legal flowchart appeared. Holding entities, trust vehicles, voting rights, succession governance. At the center, highlighted in white, Harper Cross Strategic Trust Controlling Voting Interest. 51.2% acting beneficiary and chairwoman. Evelyn Harper Cross. A jagged breath escaped Sabrina. She whispered, "No." Not defiant, frightened. Nathan took a step toward Leonard. "This is manipulated. I know the board. I know exactly who runs." From the front table, Marjorie Kent, independent board director and former federal judge, stood. Beside her, Thomas Velez, audit committee chair, rose as well. Then Rena Chuderi, operations director. One by one, the top table stood facing Evelyn, not Nathan. Marjorie spoke first. "Mr. Cole, with respect, you know who presents slides. You do not know who owns signatures." A few guests inhaled sharply. Phones were now openly recording. Diane recovered enough to step forward, face hardening into anger. "This is absurd. My son has given this company years of his life. This woman has done nothing but—" Evelyn turned her gaze to Diane. "You poured wine on a pregnant woman during a corporate event. You did it in front of cameras, sponsors, and minors from our scholarship program. You may want to choose your next sentence carefully." Diane's mouth opened, then closed. Nathan pointed at Evelyn, fingers shaking. "You lied to me." Evelyn met him with a calm that made his panic look louder. "I protected governance from men who confuse access with ownership." He laughed again, brittle and sharp. "Governance? Shot, you let me build strategy decks for executives while you— what? Watched." "You were hired to do a job," she said. "You were not promised my identity." Sabrina tried a different tactic. Soft voice, wounded face, audience facing regret. "Evelyn, I didn't know who you were." Evelyn answered immediately. "You knew I was pregnant. You knew I was his wife. You slapped me anyway." The sentence landed harder than shouting would have. Leonard opened the tablet case and removed a stylus. "Chairwoman, we can proceed with interim actions under Bylaws Article 9, Section 4. Reputational risk, assault at sponsored event, and executive conduct breach." Nathan snapped. "You can't suspend me over a personal misunderstanding." Thomas Velez finally addressed him. "Assault isn't a misunderstanding. A public humiliation of a spouse at a company-sponsored gala with alcohol thrown and physical contact, while you endorse it, that's a governance event." Nathan looked to the crowd for allies and found mostly lowered eyes. At the edge of the room, security escorted 2 photographers to a designated media area, not to silence them, but to control evidence chain. The professionalism of it made everything feel irreversible. Evelyn took a slow breath, hand briefly returning to her belly. "Record directive," she said. The records manager activated audio capture. "Effective immediately," Evelyn said. "Nathan Cole is placed on administrative suspension, pending full ethics, HR, and legal review. Access badges revoked. Device access frozen. No contact with board members outside council present." Nathan lunged forward half a step, so security shifted instantly. Not aggressive, just immovable. Evelyn continued. "Sabrina Vale's consultancy is terminated for physical assault and conduct violations at a corporate function. She is barred from all Apex Meridian properties, pending legal disposition." Sabrina's lips parted in disbelief. You can't blacklist me over one moment. Evelyn didn't blink. You assaulted a pregnant woman in front of witnesses. The moment is documented. Leonard nodded to compliance. Logged. Evelyn turned to Diane. Diane Cole is removed from all family office advisory privileges and prohibited from representing Apex Meridian in any philanthropic or social capacity. Effective now. Diane's composure cracked. You vindictive girl! Marjorie cut in iron flat. Miss Cole, now another outburst and you will be escorted out before the press corridor opens. Press corridor. The phrase raced through the ballroom like electricity. This was no private correction. It was going public. Nathan finally grasped what that meant. Evelyn, listen to me. He stepped sideways, trying to catch her eyes. We can handle this quietly. Don't do this here. Think about the baby. For the first time, something like pain moved across Evelyn's face. Not weakness, memory. Then it was gone. You should have thought about the baby before you laughed. A long beat passed. Then she addressed Leonard again. Preserve all footage from this venue. Pull internal camera angles, guest upload requests, and audio from stage mics between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m. Chain of custody to legal. Already initiated, Leonard said. Also, Evelyn added, why issue a statement before midnight? No names, no speculation, just policy. Apex protects dignity, especially for pregnant women and vulnerable guests. We enforce standards regardless of rank. Reena Chowdhury gave a small, respectful nod. Understood. Near the back, a donor who had watched everything lowered her phone and whispered to her husband, she's not retaliating. She's governing. That was exactly the point. Nathan's voice dropped, desperate now. Evelyn, please, we can talk at home. Evelyn looked at him as if evaluating a former employee file. There is no home to discuss. Counsel will contact yours. A security liaison approached Nathan with a small envelope. Mr. Cole, temporary separation notice and retrieval protocol for personal effects. He stared at the envelope but didn't take it. And the liaison set it gently on a cocktail table beside him. On screen, the corporate seal dissolved into a simple message. Leadership is not claimed, it is proven. Evelyn turned toward the stage stairs. As she passed, the board members shifted aside to clear her path. No theatrics. Just recognition. At the top step, she paused and looked back once. At the spilled wine, the shattered glass near Diane's shoes, the man who had mistaken mockery for power, and the woman who had confused cruelty with status. Then she faced the room and said, the Gala program will continue in 10 minutes. The foundation children are still waiting for scholarships. We will not fail them because adults failed themselves. A few seconds later, applause began, hesitant, then rising, then filling the ceiling with something Nathan had wanted all night and lost in a single laugh. He stood motionless in the center of it, finally understanding that the unexpected thing wasn't just who Evelyn was. It was who she chose to be when she had every reason to destroy them louder. By 12:14 a.m., 4 hours after the Gala imploded, Apex Meridian's official statement was live on every major business wire. A conduct incident occurred at tonight's Foundation Gala. Immediate interim governance actions were taken in line with company policy. Apex Meridian maintains zero tolerance for harassment, assault, or conduct that compromises guest dignity and organizational ethics. No names, no spectacle. Just language built to survive courts, shareholders, and headlines. It didn't matter. Chicago already knew. Guest footage had spread before midnight. No clean slap angle, but enough audio, enough body language, enough shocked faces to make speculation unnecessary. Executive scandal at Apex event became the morning narrative by 5:30 a.m. By 7 o'clock, it shifted to something sharper. Mystery chairwoman steps in. By 9:40, a financial desk were running with the real story. Evelyn Harper Cross, previously shielded through trust governance, had personally executed emergency control during a public misconduct event. Nathan woke to 43 missed calls and a phone that no longer opened half the apps he depended on. Corporate VPN denied, email disabled, building access suspended, his calendar wiped. At 8:12 a.m., a courier delivered a hard copy of his interim restrictions and counsel contact protocol. He sat at the edge of the guest bed in his downtown condo. Their condo, he corrected himself, then remembered that legal ownership might not be what he had believed for years. At 8:47, he called his mother. Diane answered on the second ring, already furious. "This witch is destroying us." Nathan pressed his fingers to his temple. "Ush, lower your voice. She embarrassed me in front of everyone." Nathan gave a hollow laugh. "She embarrassed you?" There was a silence neither wanted to examine. By 9:15 a.m., Sabrina had posted and deleted 2 statements, first denial, then vague accountability language drafted by someone who billed by the hour. Neither helped. Her name was now attached to assault, consultant misconduct, and pregnant guest in every algorithm that mattered. 3 pending brand conversations paused by lunchtime. At 10:30 a.m., Evelyn arrived at Apex Meridian's North Tower through the private executive entrance she had avoided for years. No flashing cameras, no victory walk. Just black coat, low heels, hair tied back, security detail 2 paces behind for optics and safety. The 42nd floor boardroom had floor-to-ceiling glass and a view of Lake Michigan that usually softened hard decisions. Not today. Leonard Shaw was already seated with Compliance Director Nora Patel, HR Chief Calvin Reese, and external investigator Dr. Eliza Monroe, retained overnight for independence. Evelyn took her chair and opened a thin folder. Timeline. Nora spoke first. Event incident window, 8:03 to 8:11 p.m. We've secured venue feeds, stage mics, corridor cams, and 26 guest submissions. Chain of custody intact. Preliminary witness list, 34. Any minors exposed? 2 scholarship recipients near table 9. No direct contact, but clear line of sight. Evelyn nodded once. Add trauma-informed outreach for their guardians. Calvin slid over a briefing packet. Employee chatter is volatile. Some are shocked. So some are pretending they always knew. We need internal messaging before rumor becomes culture. Draft it now, Evelyn said. No hero narrative, no villain theater, policy, safety, accountability. Leonard adjusted his glasses. Nathan's counsel requested private reconciliation discussions. Denied, Evelyn said. All communication through legal channels. Noted. She turned a page. Sabrina Vale? Notice served, Leonard replied. Her counsel asked whether termination can be reframed as mutual separation. No. Understood. Diane Cole? Nora answered. Access revoked across all affiliate properties. Event privilege suspension filed. Evelyn's voice stayed even. Good. For a moment, the room was quiet except for the low hum of the HVAC and distant city sirens below. Then Dr. Monroe spoke carefully. Evelyn, as external investigator, I need to ask, do you want to recuse yourself from final disciplinary recommendation due to marital proximity? Evelyn met her gaze. I'll recuse from final disposition. I won't recuse from safety protocol. Fair, Dr. Monroe said, making a note. By noon, financial media had split into 2 camps. One praised decisive governance. The other questioned why a chairwoman would hide ownership while her husband climbed internal ranks. The inference was predictable. Secrecy equals manipulation. At 12:38 p.m., in a smaller strategy room, Communications Director Mara Ellison laid 3 draft responses on the table. Press wants your face by tonight, Mara said. If you don't speak, they'll fill the gap with opinion. Evelyn scanned the drafts. No interviews. Mara blinked. That will look evasive. It will look disciplined, Evelyn replied. Issue written statement at 6 p.m. Focus on institutional standards and maternal dignity protections at all Apex-sponsored events. Announce independent review. No personal details. Mara hesitated. There's one more thing. A columnist is pushing the angle that you staged the reveal for humiliation. Evelyn closed the folder. Then we released timestamps showing emergency protocol only began after physical assault. Facts, not feelings. At 1:22 p.m., Nathan ignored legal advice and came to North Tower. He never made it past lobby security. Sir, your credentials are inactive. I work here. Not currently authorized for entry. He lowered his voice, trying charm. Call Evelyn. She'll clear me. The guard didn't flinch. I can contact legal affairs. Nathan's jaw tightened. I am her husband. The guard's expression remained professional, almost kind. Sir, I can contact legal affairs. Nathan stepped back, aware of phones nearby, aware of the humiliating symmetry. 2 nights ago he had said, remove her. Now he was the one outside the glass. At 2:05 p.m., he called Evelyn from an unknown number. She let it ring out. He texted, please don't do this through lawyers. No response. At 3:40 p.m., Diane appeared on a daytime panel via remote link and called the incident family misunderstanding inflated by corporate politics. The segment lasted 4 minutes before legal analysts dismantled it on air. One former prosecutor said, if there's video and multiple witnesses, this is not a misunderstanding, it's liability. By 4:15 p.m., so Sabrina's attorney requested mediation. By 4:27, Nathan's attorney requested temporary pause on public action due to emotional distress. By 4:35, Leonard sent both a one-line reply, process proceeds under policy. Submit formal responses within designated timelines. At 5:50 p.m., Evelyn sat alone in her private office, city turning gold outside the windows. For the first time all day, she let herself feel the ache beneath the structure. The sting on her cheek now faded to a dull tenderness, the heaviness in her lower back, the quiet throb of betrayal that policy could contain but not cure. She placed both hands over her belly and whispered, you will never learn love from people who confuse cruelty with power. At exactly 6 p.m., Apex released its second statement, independent investigation initiated. AHRM, Executive Conduct Review expanded. New maternal protection protocols for all sponsored events. Foundation board to vote on a new grant program for abandoned and medically vulnerable pregnant women. The headline changed again by 6:12 p.m. From scandal to standard. Apex Chairwoman announces protections after Gala incident. At 7:30 p.m., Nathan sat in his dark condo scrolling through the coverage, each refresh reducing him from protagonist to footnote. No one cared about his version anymore. Systems had moved, doors had shut. His access to buildings, to influence, to narrative was gone. At 8:03 p.m., exactly 24 hours after the slap, Evelyn reviewed the final agenda for the next board session. Item 7 read, Cross Maternal Care Initiative, Funding Approval. She signed the margin with a steady hand. Outside, the city carried on, indifferent and bright. Inside, she was building something that would outlive everyone who had laughed. 7 days after the gala, the Apex Meridian board reconvened in the same 42nd floor glass room, but the atmosphere had changed from damage control to structural decision-making. No one used the word scandal anymore. The language now was governance, liability, policy continuity, and reputational stabilization. The vocabulary of institutions that intended to survive individuals. Outside, February wind dragged low clouds across the lake. Inside, every folder was tabbed, every recommendation cross-referenced, every sentence reviewed by counsel. Evelyn arrived 5 minutes early. No dramatic entrance, no entourage flourish, just a precise black suit tailored for movement, her pregnancy visible, but never framed as fragility. She took her seat at the head of the table, opened the packet, and said, let's begin. Leonard Shaw summarized first. Shoshore Independent Review confirms physical contact by consultant Sabrina Vale, intentional liquid assault by Diane Cole, and enabling behavior by Nathan Cole during a company-sponsored event. Evidence threshold is high. Witness consistency is high. Risk exposure is manageable if actions remain policy-centered. Dr. Eliza Monroe, external investigator, added, I found no evidence that the reveal was staged prior to the assault. Emergency governance protocol initiated after physical strike. Time-stamped footage confirms sequence. Thomas Velez from Audit leaned forward. Recommendation? Nora Patel responded without hesitation. Terminate Nathan Cole for conduct breach, ethical failure, and reputational harm under Executive Standards Appendix. Confirm permanent disengagement of Sabrina Vale. I'll maintain Diane Cole property and representation bans. Marjorie Kent looked to Evelyn. As disclosed, you may recuse from final vote due to marital intersection. Evelyn nodded. I recuse from the vote count. I do not recuse from policy implementation. The vote proceeded, unanimous. Nathan Cole's employment ended at 10:18 a.m. By 10:31 a.m., legal notifications were delivered to all parties. By 10:44 a.m., internal staff memo drafted. By 11 a.m., access architecture updated across global sites. In an organization of that scale, power moved through systems, not speeches. At 11:20 a.m., Evelyn moved to item 7. Cross-maternal care initiative, she said, turning a page. Initial funding, $200 million. Focus areas, emergency prenatal grants, legal aid for financially abandoned pregnant women, hospital transport partnerships, and dignity protocols at all partner venues. Rena Choudhury smiled faintly. From incident to infrastructure. Evelyn held her gaze. From pain to policy. The vote passed with no dissent. At noon, while legal teams finalized language, Nathan sat in his attorney's office 3 miles away, staring at a printed termination letter that made his career collapse look clinical. He had expected negotiation, perhaps a quiet resignation package, maybe a deferred announcement. What he got was procedural finality. She can't erase me like this, he said. His attorney, Graham Pike, didn't look up from the file. She didn't erase you. The board removed you after documented misconduct. Nathan laughed bitterly. You sound like their counsel. I sound like someone reading facts. Nathan stood and paced. Set a meeting. Private. No cameras. I need 5 minutes with her. Graham exhaled. Nathan, listen carefully. Every channel is now legal. If you keep trying to contact her directly, it can trigger additional restrictions. Nathan stopped pacing. She's still my wife. Graham closed the file. Not for long. At 1:45 p.m., despite everything, Nathan tried one more route. He went to the penthouse residence Evelyn had moved out of months earlier, but had never publicly acknowledged leaving. He rang once, twice. A building manager appeared on the intercom instead. Mr. Cole, this residence is no longer under shared occupancy authorization. You need to leave. Nathan stared at the black camera lens. I just need to speak to her. Sir, leave now or building security will assist. He remained frozen for a moment. Ari then turned away as 2 pedestrians slowed, recognized him, and pretended not to. At 3 p.m., Apex released the internal memo. It was blunt, lawful, and intentionally boring, exactly what stable institutions use to prevent theater from becoming myth. The market response was calm. In fact, a few analysts upgraded their governance confidence outlook by late afternoon. At 4:30 p.m., Evelyn reviewed divorce filings in a conference room with family counsel Monica Hale. Asset separation was complex but straightforward. Most significant holdings were trust protected before marriage. Monica slid the final signature tabs forward. You're sure about no personal damages claim? Monica asked. Given the footage, public assault, emotional harm, you have grounds. Evelyn signed one page, then another. I'm sure. Monica tilted her head. Team, why? Evelyn capped the pen. Because I want freedom, not a decade of theatrical litigation. At 5:40 p.m., she arrived at the Apex Foundation Hall for a previously scheduled youth scholarship announcement, the very program that had been nearly overshadowed by the Gala incident. Staff offered to postpone again. She refused. Tonight stays, she said. They prepared for this. By 6:10 p.m., the hall was full. Students, teachers, parents, donors, cameras, and the cautious curiosity of a city waiting for spectacle. They expected a revenge speech, a takedown monologue, a viral line. Evelyn stepped to the podium and gave them none of it. When people ask what leadership is, she began, voice steady, they often describe status, control, or attention. I don't. She paused. And leadership is what you do when you've been publicly wounded and still choose not to multiply harm. The room stilled. A week ago, I experienced something no pregnant woman should experience. Humiliation, aggression, and betrayal in a room that should have been safe. I could spend tonight naming names. I won't. A few reporters lowered their pens, surprised. I'm interested in outcomes, not performances. So tonight, Apex is launching the Cross-Maternal Care Initiative, immediate support for pregnant women navigating medical risk, abandonment, and legal vulnerability. Behind her, the screen displayed concrete programs, partner hospitals, hotline access, rapid grant timelines. Not slogans, systems. Applause began from the left side, then spread in waves until the whole hall stood. In the back row, unnoticed by most, Nathan had entered through a side door wearing a cap and dark coat. He watched from the shadows as the woman he had laughed at transformed the worst night of her life into a blueprint that would outlast him. For a second, his face softened into recognition, the kind that arrives too late to matter. After the speech, he tried to move closer, but security stepped in gently. "Sir, this is a restricted corridor. I just need 1 minute. Not authorized." He looked past them and saw Evelyn 30 feet away, surrounded by scholarship recipients and mothers holding infants. She did not look in his direction. At 7:02 p.m., she exited through the east corridor into cold evening air. No triumphant smile, no backward glance, just a long inhale, one hand resting over her belly, the other holding the initiative folder against her coat. Leonard caught up beside her. "Press keeps asking what surprised you most." Evelyn looked out at the city lights flickering on, one building after another. "They keep calling the reveal unexpected," she said quietly. "It wasn't." Leonard waited. She answered her own thought. "The unexpected part was this. After everything they did, I still chose to build." She stepped into the waiting car. Door closed, motor quiet. Behind her, the foundation hall glowed warm against the dark, full of women who would now be safer than she had been. And in every newsroom summary that night, the final line was the same. A man laughed when his pregnant wife was humiliated. He didn't know who she was. By the time he learned, she had already turned his cruelty into a legacy he could never touch.